All right, let's talk about the results section of a scientific paper. I know, it can feel like the scariest part to write, but here's the thing. It's actually where all your hard work gets its moment in the spotlight. This is where your data finally gets to speak. So today, we're going to make sure it tells a clear, powerful story. Let's build the perfect results section, one piece at a time.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll get into the why. What's the real point of this section anyway? Then we're going to build it from the ground up, kind of like a house. We'll start by laying the foundation with your participants, then we'll paint a picture with your data, get to the main event with your actual findings, and finally, we'll put a nice, clean roof on it with a solid summary.
First things first, before you even type a single word, you have to get your head in the right space. Every part of a paper has a very specific job to do, and the results section might just have the most specific job of all. So, what is its core mission?
And there it is. That's the whole secret. Its one and only mission is to objectively report the findings. That's it. Think of yourself as a court reporter, not the lawyer. You're not there to argue or persuade, you're just there to present the evidence, the pure, unvarnished facts of what you found. All that other stuff, the interpretation, the debate, what this all means, that all comes later in the discussion section. Right here, right now, it's just the facts.
Okay, with that golden rule in mind, just the facts, let's start building. You know, any good structure needs a rock-solid foundation. And in a research paper, that foundation is always your participants.
I mean, it just makes sense, right? Before your reader can understand your findings, they have to know who these findings are actually about. Are we talking about elite athletes, first-year college students, a specific patient population? Describing your participants is what grounds your entire study in reality. It sets the stage for everything else you're about to say.
So what does that actually look like? Well, you've got to cover the key details. Start with the raw numbers. How many people did you start with? And how many ended up in the final analysis? Then tell us about them. What were their baseline characteristics? And here's the really crucial part. You have to be totally transparent about anyone who didn't make it to the end. Reporting on exclusions, dropouts, and any missing data, that's not just, good manners. It's absolutely essential for scientific integrity.
And why is this so important? Because what you're really doing is handing your reader a detective's magnifying glass. By giving them all this information, they can look for any potential bias in your sample. They can judge how representative your group really is. In other words, they can start to answer the big question. Can your findings be applied to a wider population? That level of transparency is what builds trust and makes your work credible.
Now here's a pro tip to keep your writing super clean and easy to read. You don't want to just dump a huge wall of numbers into your paragraphs. Nobody wants to read that. The best way to do it is like this. You summarize the really important story points in the text, like who was excluded and why. And then you direct your reader to a beautifully organized Table 1 for all the nitty-gritty details. It's just way more efficient and a lot friendlier for your reader.
All right, our foundation is poured and set. It's time to put up the framing and the walls. We need to give our reader a broad picture of the data before we zoom in on the main event, and the tool for that job is descriptive statistics.
Think of this as the 30,000-foot view of your data. You're using basic stats like the mean, which is just the average score, and the standard deviation, which tells you how spread out the scores are, to give an overall summary. We're not testing our big hypothesis yet. Nope, we're just setting the scene.
And honestly, a simple table like this is probably the most powerful way to do it. Just look how clear this is. In a single glance, your reader can see the average score for the control group right next to the intervention group. It's a super clear, at-a-glance comparison that perfectly sets them up for what's coming next.
And hey, you starting to see a pattern here? It's that same strategy we use for the participants. You use the text to tell the story, to highlight the most important numbers, and then you point the reader to a detailed table for the full breakdown. This whole text for the story, tables for the data approach is a total game changer for clear, professional, scientific writing.
All right, the foundation is set, the scene is painted, it is time for the main event. This is where we report the primary and secondary outcomes of our study. This is the real heart of it all.
Now, it's really important to remember that not all outcomes are created equal. You have to make a clear distinction between what's primary and what's secondary. Think of it like a music festival. Your primary outcomes are the headliners. They're the reason everyone bought a ticket. They directly answer your main research question. Your secondary outcomes? They're like the awesome opening acts. Still important, still cool, but they're not the main event. You've got to report both, but you always have to keep that hierarchy clear.
Okay, let's break down why this sentence is so good at reporting a primary outcome. First, notice how objective it is. It just says that changes are illustrated in Figure 1.
There's no hype, no spin, no interpretation. It just points you to the evidence. And it perfectly guides the reader, telling them to look at a figure for the visual trend while promising to give them the hard numbers right here in the text. That is just beautiful, clean reporting.
And this brings us back to the golden rule, the one thing you absolutely have to burn into your brain at this stage. Report. Do not interpret. I'm telling you, this is the #1 trap that people fall into. You're so excited about your results. You want to immediately start explaining why you think you found what you found. You have to resist that urge. Save it. The why gets its own starring role later in the discussion section.
We have made it to the final step of our construction project. All the evidence has been laid out, clearly and objectively. Now, it's time to put the capstone on it. A short, clean summary to tie it all together.
Now, let's be clear, this is not the place for a grand finale or a big mic drop moment. Think of it more like a quick previously on recap. All you're doing is restating the most important findings using that same clear, neutral language. And that list of avoids over there, that's your checklist for success. Absolutely no interpretation. No comparing your results to what other people found, and definitely no talking about the implications.
And here's a perfect example of what that looks like in action. See how clean that is? It just states what happened. But notice what's not there. There's no speculation about why it happened. There's no discussion about how this could be a game changer. It's just a purely factual, direct summary of the key finding. It's the perfect way to leave your reader with a crystal clear takeaway.
So there you have it, the 4 essential building blocks for a perfect results section. Step 1, lay that foundation by describing your participants. 2, paint the big picture with your descriptive stats. 3, report the main event, your outcomes. And 4, add that finishing touch with a clean, simple summary. That's it, 4 powerful steps to help you present your data with total clarity and confidence.
When you follow this structure, you've done your job perfectly. You have presented the what of your study. The facts are on the table, they're clear, they're undeniable. And that, of course, leads us to the final critical question. Now that you've done all that, are you ready to finally explain the why? Because that, well, that's a whole other story for a whole other section.